Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session
with your host, Michael Reardon.
We are in a mental health crisis in America. 2025, they say 50% of adults are going to have some type of mental illness. And so we are running amok, and we need to figure out what is going to be the best way for people to get into a mental or a better mental health. So this is why I'm hoping to have a conversation with you today, Kim, to look at the status of mental health today and how can people step toward that better mental health. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then, of course, how you help people.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Kim Egel. I am a licensed mental health therapist, like you said. Been in the field for about 20 years with my own practice and licensed for about 15. When you asked me, why or how does one get into this field or how did I get into this field? It was always a very, very natural part of me that just was so curious about all different kinds of people. Like even when, you're in certain places of life, whether it's, like high school and people want to kind of go into their cliques and go into like where they feel more comfortable. I was always the person that was so kind of in everybody's clique. Right. And so I always really enjoy relating to all kinds of people. And I think that, when I was thinking about a career choice and also just relating to people, I always feel like it was very interesting to relate to all different kinds of people. And when I was thinking about a career choice, this is a field where you get to really see life through so many different kinds of like cultures and opinions and perspectives. So to me, when you kind of talk about listening to people's problems and you phrased it that way, I've never actually thought of my profession in that way. Like I more see it as you're hearing about somebody's movie. It's almost like an artistic job for me in terms of when someone talks, it's almost like I see visuals and I'm just watching somebody's movie. And when they come to me, there's usually a specific reason or symptom or something that happened. And I just get to, fiercely listen. And as you're fiercely listening, you really start seeing certain patterns or hearing about certain behaviors or actions or just things that are going on where you can kind of see where you can start helping somebody. So for me, it's not so much problems. It's more of just like how someone's showing up in the world and they're coming to you for, usually there's something going on with how either they're showing up in the world or how people are responding to them. So to me, it's almost like, okay, let's see what's happening. Let's see what I can listen for. So you can start getting different results and you can start feeling better. So I guess that's the way I see it.
Yeah. When it comes to communication and listening, the majority of people, I'm not saying you, listen to respond.
Sure.
But in the work that you do, it seems like you listen to understand, where you're trying to understand them, like where they're coming from. And then, as you said, to look at the areas where maybe we can make things a little bit better, like looking at their blind spots and saying, what if we did this instead?
Well, I think that's why it's a career, right? It's like if I'm listening to just respond, to give my opinion about someone's life, that's not helping anybody. That's just what they're getting from the outside world. And so it is when I say listening, it's interesting because it sounds like such a basic skill. But when you truly are listening to understand and try to hear where the glitches are in somebody's life, that is what therapy is all about to me. It's so simple, but it could be hard to do that because of all the, stuff that we have to clear out about our own self and our own life and our own beliefs and our own perspectives, especially when we're working with someone that sees the world and does things really differently than you.
One of the things I like to ask is like the journey someone would embark on when they begin working with you. What would be a typical first session with you? Would it be looking at childhood, just talking about your regular things, favorite sports team, etc.?
Yeah, usually there's a reason why someone's reaching out and wanting to talk to a therapist. So usually there's an issue or a situation that's the reason for the call. And for me, everybody has a different approach when it comes to how they do their own therapy and deal with their clients. I really like to get right to it. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I think my approach is really direct, and it's really it's an approach where let's go, like, get ready and let's go. And I'm the first one to say that's not for everybody. Some people might need a little bit more cushioning and want to talk about the sports teams. But I think that at this point for me, I get a lot of referrals based on clients that I've already seen. So you get a lot of people that kind of already have a little bit of a heads up about your style. And it's like anything in life, you're not going to be a fit for anybody. So I really and I always do an introduction call. I have a free consultation call that I do. It's really brief, but I do it. And before I take on a client, because I think it's really important for that potential client to kind of get a feel for me and to make sure not only that it's a fit for them, but it's also a fit for me. I think it's part of my job to make sure that I'm taking on somebody that I feel like I could help, and that is, talking about symptoms or talking about a situation that I feel qualified for, or that I feel I could be helpful for.
We like direct here, so I don't want you to be shying away from direct. We don't like
Don't
being
you
around the
worry,
bush.
Michael.
I want you just to go.
There's no beating around the bush over here.
Exactly. One of the things you said was, people are calling because they have a reason for calling, right?
Mhm.
There's something going on that they want to talk to someone about. Do you find that the reason they're calling is the root of the problems?
No. I think that one situation is not the root, but I think that if you really kind of start digging, you could get to the root. I think that's the whole, I think sometimes, when I say no really quickly, I think that the problem that they're calling you about, could very quickly lead you to the root. Let's say they have, a history of just a lot of strained relationships that end really quickly. So maybe you're listening to the 20th time it happened. And then as you start talking about the relationship history and how other relationships ended and how many good, friendships do they have in their life? What's the relationship like with their family? You can quickly kind of hear, oh, there's a pattern. So I think that you bring up a really good point while I'm like kind of talking it through. I think you're looking for patterns, and patterns often point to root issues.
One of the things I want to ask with, the idea of patterns is the idea or the concept of self-sabotaging.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people do this unknowingly.
Sure.
Sometimes it could be success, it could be happiness, relationships, things like that. Maybe because they have a trauma from their past childhood. Maybe their parents got divorced. And if they are going along with the lines with relationships, we don't have to just stay on relationships all our conversations. But it's almost like they don't want to go through the hardship. So it's almost like a protection mechanism where
Mm-hmm.
it's like they do it almost instinctually or subconsciously. It's like, hey, I'm going to self-sabotage this good thing because I don't want the bad feelings that come after it.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I mean, that's what you have to sniff out. And that's sometimes what you're educating people about is, hey, it sounds like, this is going on. Like sometimes people come and they're aware. They're like, hey, like I have this pattern of kind of being avoidant. Like, here's what I do when I get really close to locking in a relationship. I start kind of, pushing away. And sometimes, you're there. So you're there to really gauge where your client's at. Sometimes you have to kind of listen, you're gauging where that client's at. And sometimes it's a lot of education before you can even introduce. So it's like, hey, I'm going to have you look at, relationship styles, like different ways of attaching, securely attached, avoidant attachment, anxiously attached. Sounds like you're anxious. I'm going to give you a book to read and I want to see what you think. And so then that gives a client kind of, they're educating themselves, they're growing, they're learning, they're doing their personal work. And as you do that, that allows for the therapeutic work to get deeper and for you to introduce deeper concepts.
I like the idea of just, check out this book. Tell me what you think, because it's
100%.
more so of
Mm-hmm.
you take this and you figure out what you are going to gain from it rather than me telling
Mm-hmm.
you what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I know sometimes when it comes to therapy, therapists have a bad rap for being cookie cutter, meaning like this is what works. And so
Mm.
we're going to do this because it's going
Hmm.
to work. And then
Yeah.
sometimes those people, they stay in therapy 2, 3 years and they never graduate because
Hmm.
they're not looking at the person. They're
Yeah.
just looking at what they did in school or, in their internships and practice. And it's like, well, this works most of the time or eventually, but the work that you do, it seems like you're more direct. Like, let's get to the root, let's get to the reason, let's get you better. Why are other therapists in the mindset of let's prolong this, right? Let's meet next
Hmm.
week and graduation is going to be in 4 years. Like, you could have
Hmm.
got a college education in that time, and you're
Hmm.
over here talking about things that are almost a loop. And
Hmm.
and this is a common thing that people talk about when it comes to therapy. I forget the guy's name. He's a podcaster also,
Hmm.
big guy. He went to therapy 2 years, and he said year two, he was like, "What am I doing here?" Like literally, where it's a loop of, I
Hmm.
come in, you tell me how am I doing, I tell you about some of my problems that I'm having, and then that's it. And then I was like, see you next week. And it's like, he got to the point. It's like, I'm not getting better. I was just ruminating on the bad things in my
Yeah.
life. He's like, I want to look at the good things.
Yeah.
And so, like the work that you do, I know you don't do that. So,
Hmm.
I want you to really like,
I
dive
love it.
in and lean
Hmm.
into like, how are you different than other
Yeah,
therapists?
I got you. Well, what I can't answer is why other therapists do that. I don't know. I could tell you 100% right now, and I think this is almost kind of a controversial thing to say, but I do not think talk therapy is for everybody. I think for a certain kind of person, it's actually a little bit dangerous because if you're wired to really think deeply and you have an issue with rumination and just like just twisting things around and around, if you get, even having certain conversations where people start kind of being like, why do you think you do that? Why do you think it's not healthy? I think there's so many times where, I tell people, you know what, sounds like you need to have fun. You actually just need to go, maybe like go on a vacation, like take the money that you would spend for me, go on a vacation, go have fun. You need to go have fun. Right. And so, I cannot say how much. That's why I think I really love having kind of like the whole body wellness as my anchor for how I do my work, because I think that physical, for me personally, I will be straight up, talk therapy is not for me. It's not my go to. My go to is like I've been a prior athlete. And so physical stuff has helped me through the most difficult parts of my life. And I really encourage that for people when I just am watching them loop and loop and loop. So, I'm the first one to kind of, it's not fun for me to just watch someone continuing to come week after week after week. And I think I'm doing a disservice if I just sit and I listen to somebody just on a record player. But the problem is some people don't want to do the work. Some people just want to take, the prescribed medication. They don't want to work out. They don't want to eat better. They don't want to sleep better. They don't want to do the basics better. And that really puts me in a pickle. So, eventually what usually happens is they get sick of probably me encouraging them to do all those things. They're not going to change and they kind of fade off. But I agree with you that just keeping someone around when I can't do it. I think it's my job to make sure that someone's not just sitting there without not even results, because that's tricky. Sometimes it's not a result you see, but just like, if this is not working for you, let's figure out what will. Maybe like start doing martial arts, start surfing, start going, what can you start doing? Start doing ceramics. Like, what can you start doing to self-express and have you time?
I know this is going to be different for individuals because everyone's unique, but it's a two-pronged thing. When and where does mental health begin?
What do you mean by that? When and
So, for
where does
example,
mental health begin?
mental health is something that is not only for adults. We can break
Mm-hmm.
a child, right? A child can have
Sure.
traumas and they can be a total mess.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and we would do a lot of standardized testings for our,
Yeah.
the children. It's terrible. And I saw first graders literally more stressed than an adult who was trying to pay bills every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could see
Yeah.
them, like you could just see they're distraught. I'm talking about these 7-year-olds that are so
Mm-hmm.
exuberant and playful, and I'm talking about some of the best learners and students, and you could just see them during the testing time, and like what was going on in their mind. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't good. That is a win. When I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had to go through that. Adults, we have different problems now, right? We have financial stresses, maybe
Mm-hmm.
relationship stresses, maybe drama, friends or whatever, family. But then we have to ask ourselves the where, like, where did this begin? Right. And where do I
Mm-hmm.
begin? Do I start
Mm-hmm.
going to the gym? Do I start eating healthier? Do I start saying, people to, get out of my comfort zone? So we go for meetups, we go for walks. So like, when and where does mental health begin? Is something that we just say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm going to change my mental health and I'm going to just think more positively. I'm going to give myself
Mm-hmm.
affirmations and visual boards, and I'm going to read all these books and I'm going to be better magically.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it a journey?
Well, mental health is like physical health, right? So it's like your physical health, it starts when you're born, right? Like depending on the nutrition that you're in, that's why some kids are malnutrition. It's your mental health. It's begins the same time that your physical health is, which is like the whole body. It's looking at the person. That's always an aspect of you that's alive as long as you're alive. That's why I think, when you talk about just like people going through really serious trauma when they're really young, it's it's like the consequences or the symptoms can come later in life. It's always firing, it's always there, it's always something. I think just when you're young, you're under the influence of the adults in your life, and that's really dictating the situations that you get put in. I think once you're an adult, you have choice. And so but your mental health is always alive.
Yeah. So if we can see that mental health begins when we're young, right? And,
Hmm.
when we're born,
Hmm.
why is it not something that many parents and adults and teachers are looking at in these youths and these children?
So I don't, it's tricky because when you kind of say teachers or adults, like it's like some people are and some people aren't. I think that's the way it's always been. Some people care about their physical health and some people don't, even though everyone knows that if you don't do if you don't do healthy things, it's not going to be a good outcome. So I would kind of have that response for the question you're posing. It's not on everybody's radar. Why it's not is individual to them.
Do you find that if it's not on their radar, it's because maybe they're struggling with mental health?
It could be. It's almost like, hurt people,
Hmm.
right? If you ever hear that quote. So
Yeah.
I think that like when something's not, there's either two things. It's just not on your radar because you didn't get taught and it's just not something you even know what to do, or it's like some people are like, oh, I ate healthy. And then you look at their diet and it's like, that's not healthy, right? Or it's maybe something that is on their radar. They're really aware of it, but they can't get a grip on it. So it's hard to see other people try to be healthy. Right?
Mm.
Sometimes it's like it's hard to see somebody attain or have what you really want for yourself, but you don't know how to get. So you've just kind of given up. So I think there's a lot of different ways that, you can be projecting your own stuff onto people. And there's a lot of different ways that can come out.
How would someone know that they're projecting something negative that other people are going to be picking up on? That, for example, like, a mom or dad might be yelling and stuff in the room and their kids' hair, and that's a negativity for that child. And
Hmm.
I'm sure that parent or those adults didn't think of like, hey, I want to
Hmm.
project this to, to my children. But there's many children who are growing up
Sure.
and they say, I want a different type of relationship, or I want a different type of circumstance,
Hmm.
whether it be money,
Yeah.
career, because maybe they don't like their boss, and the dad or mom comes home saying, I hate my boss all the time. So they want to be
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. So
Totally.
it's almost like we're going down this road and we're trying to fix all the things that were broken from the from our caretakers, our parents, our guardians, our
Hmm.
teachers, whatever. So we learn from perception saying, I don't want to do that. And
Hmm.
so we make a choice, and sometimes we miss out many of the things that we need to know. So prior knowledge, wisdom, if you want to call it that.
Sounds like you're talking about self-awareness, and everyone
Hmm.
has a different level of self-awareness. And some people are not interested in being more self-aware. They're just not
Sure.
interested. So
Yeah.
if you're not interested in being self-aware, you don't even know you're projecting. You don't really care that you're projecting. So when your child comes to you and goes, hey, that's mean, that's not right, it's like you're going to get a reaction that's really immature, right? It's almost like an emotional immaturity. I talk a lot about that sometimes in terms of being raised by parents that are just emotionally immature. It's just either your parents are really emotionally immature, you didn't learn the skills, and then your journey or your interest or whatever may be didn't lead you to want to look inwardly yourself. Sometimes that's a really intimidating, scary thing to do when, you grew up in certain situations or certain cultures or with a certain way of life. And then I think there's people that really grew up around it. And sometimes it's like, it's interesting. It's almost like it's such a unique thing that you have to figure out for yourself. Cause I think sometimes then people are like, well, now I'm really self aware. And there can be problems coming from being on that end of the spectrum. So it's always like kind of the pendulum where it's where's this area where you're not over here, but you're not over here. And you're just happy based on who you are and how you want to show up.
I want to talk the difference between mental health and like health. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the question is this more so, and like I just want you to kind of answer the best you can, because it's going to be a very difficult way to present it. If I look in the mirror, or if I put myself on a scale, I can see how much I weigh, and I can look BMI, and BMI can tell me if I'm appropriate, right? So I can say, I'm a little bit too heavy, or I'm too skinny, or whatever, right? That can be my health, right? I can say that's my health. But there can also be a proponent to mental, where I'm looking at that as I'm fat, I'm obese, like I'm a slob, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I look in the mirror, I don't necessarily see those pounds anymore. I'm looking in the mirror and I see someone I'm disgusted with, and I'm like, and this is a pattern now, where I'm constantly doing this, and it's like now I'm harming myself almost,
Mm-hmm.
where I can change my weight, right? I can do the things that are going to make me healthy. I can eat better. I can get diet plans. I can get a trainer. But it seems like that mental damage is often worse than the physical damage, even though the physical damage is almost passive most of the times. I can go to McDonald's because it's a habit. After work, I go to McDonald's, or I go to Burger King, or wherever, right? And then I come home, and it's a habit too to look in the mirror and say, look at me. Do you find that this is something that we can begin to address at an earlier age, so this doesn't happen, it seems like? Because it seems like at some point it's like people fall into this, right?
Yeah.
As they age, it's like, I'm a little bit heavier, my bones hurt a little bit, I can't go to the gym, I don't have any time. So we have all these excuses, and we fail to take accountability.
This to me, though, is not even an age thing. This is just your own relationship between your body mind, right? Because you can talk about, I used to work with really severely like eating disorders, women that had a lot of eating disorders. And you could be, unfortunately, like what you're talking about, everyone can be praising you for all the weight you lost and you look great and like you seem so great. And it's like they don't know what that person's doing to be that weight, or what they're doing to themselves, and how much there's the shame and the self-hatred going on. But inwardly, but outwardly, they look great and everyone's praising them. It's so dangerous, right? But I think like mental health and physical health, it doesn't always align. A lot of people look at someone, they go, oh, they look so healthy. It doesn't mean they're not going home and drinking a bottle of wine every night. It's like you never know. But eventually, you said something interesting. Eventually, if that becomes a habit and it goes on, eventually the physical health is going to catch up with you. 5 years, project 5 years of someone having really unhealthy physical habits, going to McDonald's, every night, you are going to see the physical manifestation of that eventually. So I think that sooner or later, your habits mentally or physically are going to align. And I think it starts really young, meaning like your influences around you, what you get into yourself. Are you an athletic kid? Are you not an athletic kid? Do you eat well? Do you naturally want to eat well? There's so many things that go into, do you meet someone along the way that's like a really good role model? Do you not meet someone along the way that's a really bad role model? Like, there's so many things going into life and variables that impact what you're talking about. Getting to that moment where you're sitting there and you're 30 and you're eating McDonald's and you're not feeling good about yourself. There's so many things that brought you to that point.
I talk about this a lot in the podcast, is the concept of self-care and self-love, where we can always say we're having a self-care day and we eat a bunch of ice cream or pizza because, we had a rough week. And sure enough, I'm sure there's times when you can have a glass of wine or a beer or two or whatever it be. Like, you can live life. I'm not saying not to live life, but it seems like it becomes our badge. The reason why we do this is because we need the self-care, we need the self-love. Is there better methods that people can
Mhm.
can take instead of using substances, alcohol, drugs, things like
Yeah.
that will be better fits for them than the alternative? Because let's say you go out on Friday night, Saturday night, and you got to turn up because you had such a rough week. And yeah, sure, right? But then Sunday you're like, so hungover. The next day
Mhm.
you're so hungover, and it's just like now you're like, man, now I have to spend a whole day recouping just to do it maybe again next week or something
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
Like is mental health more so of looking at those situations and saying, let's not do it, let's keep it to a minimum, let's start to fill our life with better things, maybe walks, outings
Mhm.
with friends, etc. Because I can't imagine mental health just being the state and quality of our mind that, as long as we do the right things, and I'm sure everyone can say what is right and what's wrong depending on
Mhm.
their own opinions.
Sure.
But we're at a crossroad now of people need to see if it benefits them. How can someone find out if it's beneficial for them?
Well, I think you're talking about a lifestyle versus a diet, right? Like it's a lifestyle. Like if that's your lifestyle that Saturday and Sunday are just like you're hitting it hard and then like pushing through the work week to hit it hard again. Sounds like that lifestyle is going to have like all of our lifestyles have consequences. No matter
Mm,
what you pick, you're living a lifestyle, whether it's a healthy one, a not healthy one. And I think it's for everybody. This is part of the self-awareness piece. It's part of everyone. And I think this is where I also see a lot of people having glitches. I think it's hard for a lot of people to be honest with themselves. I think when you don't want to see something, it's amazing what we do as humans to not see it, right? It's like maybe you don't want to see and admit to yourself even how much you drink because you're having fun. You don't want to give that up, but it's like, but you have hangovers and there's all these other consequences and right. But sometimes someone has to be ready to look at the areas of their lives that are causing issues because it's like, so now we're going to get into that top of like resistance, right? Like oftentimes like it's resistance that will fill when there's areas of our lives that like aren't really working, but maybe we don't want to do something about it yet. It's like, it's almost like there's a cycle of like how change kind of comes for us. So, to kind of go back to your question, I think it's a lifestyle. And I think it's up to everybody, especially when we're all adults, to look at your own choices and look at the things that you're choosing that are creating your lifestyle. And if you really give it an honest look, like you try to look really honestly and you go, I'm drinking a lot and I'm not feeling good, that's up to you to start changing something and then see what happens, right? It's little by little. It doesn't need to be drastic. You don't need to cut out, what you need to really be honest with yourself about what you need and what makes you feel good and what doesn't. But again, I see how there could be a lot of reasons why someone doesn't want to look at that. Like sometimes, especially with substances, a lot of times if we're overly drinking or overly eating or doing anything overly, we're often trying to distract ourselves from something that's uncomfortable. So like this kind of goes into a rabbit hole of, all the things that when I'm working with something that you have to start unpacking.
yeah. I was thinking of the idea of change. Like a
Hmm.
person can't force someone to change,
No.
right?
Yeah.
Like I can't say, hey, wife, change. Like
Yep.
it's not going to work. Now, of course, she
Correct.
can see things that, in my life saying, hey, like I see this is not good. It could be infidelity. It could be, as we were talking about substances, things like that. There could be
Hmm.
something that she might say that says, hey, I would like for this to be changed. And maybe there's some resistance, like I don't want to change,
Hmm.
I'm who I am. And I want to talk about the ego, how the ego plays with change, and maybe someone wanting you to be in a better position because maybe they are coming with a reason and they're saying, hey, this is what I'm experiencing.
Hmm.
And their ego is stopping them from wanting to truly change.
Well, it's like when you're on the other end of somebody and you're watching someone self-destruct, you're correct with that, you could want someone to change so much, but until that person wants it, it's, there's not much you can do. Me included, even as a therapist, some people it's like I can only help to a certain point. I think when you're talking about change, yeah, someone needs to want that for themselves, and until they want that, I think that what you can do with being on the other end of them is just really express your concern. Like, let's say somebody's, you know, not eating well or smoking cigarettes, and it's just like, I'm really concerned about you. Like, there's a way to address your concern, but there's also a point where that person's going to have to want to change. And sometimes, we hear this all the time. Sometimes we have to experience things in our life that really scare us into changing things. Like maybe they go to the doctor and they, discover some health issue because of their unhealthy habit. Sometimes it's like, I do believe, and I see it all the time. It's like life murmurs, and then that murmur gets louder and louder and louder, especially when it's unhealthy things we're doing to wake us up. Like, I think life's always trying to wake us up. It's just a matter of, are we listening or not? And I think when you're like having people that really care about you and they're well intended, and your people are coming at you expressing concern, I think that's why sometimes relationships people start pushing away. It's like, at what point can you keep watching someone you really care about make really unhealthy decisions and stay in close relationship with them? Because it's like, we are a product of who we hang around. And it's not saying, hey, you should like ditch someone and not look back, but there is a point where it's almost like, the kind of lifeguard theory is, if you jump in without your like flotation device, like someone who's drowning is going to take you down with them. So I think it's this fine balance of like, you express concern and you try to help, but like, it's also being really mindful of how you can't help somebody that doesn't want help.
Very true. I know there's many unfortunate or sad situations where, people are begging them like, hey, like,
Oh yeah.
see someone, or like, things need to be changed. And typically the outcome is not necessarily the best. But what I would like to know is, how can someone start to live in a pattern that's more, or would lead to a better mental health and better health? For me, I'll go first. So it's just, maybe give some examples. I don't know.
Yeah. Cool.
I like to go to the gym. I like to go to the gym 4 to 5 times a week. I like to play with my kids as much as I can. I don't care. If I have something that needs to be done, if the kids want to play, I play with them, because I understand something, that I am not going to get this for long, right? They're going to grow up before I know it. I'm going to say, dang, I missed that. Did I pay attention? So I'm not so much worried about, the money right now. It doesn't matter. Like, we're good. Lifestyle is exactly what I want it to be right now. And it's nice, right? I get to do everything that is appropriate to me. At the end of the day, I say I feel good. If I feel heavy, right? Maybe I had a rough day. Maybe because of work, maybe because family stuff, right? Parents are older. I might journal, and I will journal, and I will say, I'm going to give this, all my problems and all my concerns to this piece of paper, and I'm just going to get it out of my mind. And then from there, I will say, okay, now that my mind is empty, let me figure out a plan. Can things start to be changed, right? And as we said, I can't change people, but can I change circumstances? Maybe a little bit. And can I influence stuff? Yeah, sure. Can I say something? Of course, right? Did I do everything I could, right? So I make sure I don't have regrets at the end of the day. And this is something I do on a constant basis to make sure that I'm in alignment with who I like to be down the road. Because if I'm 80 and I look back when I was, I'm 36 now, when I'm 36 and I say, you know what, I'm ashamed of that person, right? I don't want that, so I'm just focused on who I will be proud of in the future also. But then also today, so I'm not trying to fast forward my life. I'm trying to enjoy the moments, enjoy all the good things, as much as I can. I'm not going to go out and eat a bunch of tacos every day, even though they're good, and pizza every day and ice cream every day, since they're good. I understand they're good.
Yeah.
But I understand my health is more important. So I'm not going to do that. So, this is just me, how I
Yeah.
am making sure that I'm in alignment with who I like to be.
Right. Well, when I'm listening to you, here's what I hear. I hear
Yeah,
that
let me hear it.
you found your aim, right? Like your aim is to be a person that when you think back about who you were when you were younger, that you're going to be really proud of them. So you have this aim that's constantly keeping you in check. Right. And I also think when you talk about change is so often really small. It's just small little things that you start doing differently. I think sometimes change feels really overwhelming for people because they're thinking about it so drastically. And it's really rare when life drastically changes overnight. Either usually it's, a certain circumstance in that matter, or you decide to, move to a different country and change your life completely. Right. Like, so but usually changes even in that respect changes little by little. You get the idea, you start researching, you start deciding you want to move, right? It's choice by choice by choice. So I think it's really important to break big things down. Even losing weight, let's say you need to lose 100 pounds, to be like, oh my god, how are you, that feels so overwhelming. But if you just go, okay, like I'm going to change like one or two things. You know what, I'm not going to drink soda, I'm going to just start drinking water. That's it. That little change is huge. It's huge. So I've seen people drop 20 pounds quickly if they just take away soda. That's it. And like, so I think that, and then I think there's something like the concept of momentum. When you start going in a healthy direction because you made little changes and then you see the physical result, if like we're going to stick with that weight analogy, that gives you momentum and you start feeling good and then you start wanting to do all the other things. So I think at first, people go, hate working out. Oh, it's so awful. At first, you're going to have to get through that thing again, resistance, right? It's like we're always going to have resistance toward change because that's human nature. But I think when you kind of catch on the momentum train and you see and you start feeling really good because you're doing those little things differently, that's what pushes momentum. And then once you catch momentum, now you've got this wind pushing you and it doesn't feel so hard anymore. It kind of actually is like you almost get a second wind where it's like, this is great, I want to go in this direction. If someone made me go back to that direction, I'd say no. It's a little mini rundown on a change because I think it's that's obviously there's so much more to it, but just breaking any big thing down into smaller parts so you can wrap your head around it and just kind of see what's in front of you could be helpful.
What would be like 2 or 3 examples of building momentum? So for people who are saying, okay, I like the idea of momentum, what would
Yeah.
that be for them?
For everyone, it's different, right? But it's like, and I think that momentum's not something that you build, it's something that happens, right? Like, it's like you get the courage to just dig your heels down and get some mental grit and strength and do that thing that truly you need to do to be healthier. And then, you push yourself to wake up really early, even though you don't want to, and you go to the gym for X amount of days in a row. And eventually, when you jump on the scale or you just put on some jeans and you go, you know what? These are looser and I feel better. That's momentum. Then you're like, you know what? I'm going to keep going to the gym. This is really working. You know what? While I'm at it, I'm going to also like cut out eating 5 cookies every night and I'm just going to eat one. You're right. So and then you make another change and then momentum, something that happens. I think it's the result of doing something differently, positive, and creates a positive result. And then you just have this like natural like path that gets kind of, curated that you want to go down. It's almost like you don't have to force yourself anymore. The resistance lowers and then the momentum goes up.
Motivation is similar to momentum. For example, New Year's, a lot of people have the momentum, they have the motivation, and maybe they do really good. I'm sure you probably see memes of, how the gyms are on December 31st, no one there. January 1st, there's a whole slew of people there. And then come February 1st, there's not as many people there again. So it's kind of like we give ourselves a momentum to change. And then it's like going back to one of the things I said earlier, like we self-sabotage. It's like, we have the good thing going for us, but then we don't keep it up. Like I'm not asking for a trick or anything, but like, is there something that people can focus on? A practice. It could be journaling. It could be meditation, yoga. I did Bikram for 2 years, and that was some of the best experiences I had in my life because when I didn't want to do it, I still did it. And then after I did it, I felt so good
Yeah,
that I
cool.
did it. And I'm not saying that everyone has to be a yogi and everyone has to be, a gym goer and things like that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
figure out what works for you.
Sure. I think I mean, we're talking about like discipline, right? To some
Oh
degree, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we need to
Discipline,
have
yeah.
discipline, right? That's what you're talking about. And it's like what discipline does is it makes us like pushes us through doing things that we have resistance towards. I don't want to get up at 4 a.m. But you know what? I also want this. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be more disciplined. So, and I also think when you talk about kind of like New Year's resolutions, I think that's a little bit of a trap because it can't possibly be true that everybody in the world is ready to make this huge change on January 1st. That's a very
Hmm.
conventional way
Yeah.
of thinking. I actually don't believe in, I believe in people at the right time for them deciding what kind of shifts and changes for positive that they want to make. But I don't think it needs to be January 1st every single year where people have to do that. You can do that anytime you want. And I think obviously it doesn't, it's like you have to really factor in where you're at, what kind of change it is that you want to make, and like what the right timing is for you, because you have to be ready and ready to commit to, especially when it comes to, I hear a lot of people that like haven't been to the gym in 4 months, but then, on New Year's, they're going to go 7 days a week. And it's like, that's the worst idea ever. And that's not me not promoting, your physical health. That's me going, that's too much of a reach. Let's start with, you're going to go 1 day a week. So I think it's making realistic goals and doing it when you're really truly ready to make a change. And that can't possibly be for everybody in the world on January 1st. So that's where that individual, awareness comes in.
Yeah. I was reading a book. I forget the name. I'm gonna have to put it in the video. But the book did some interesting research on the idea of new. So New Year's sparks something in the brain differently than a new week or a new day or a new month or whatever it be. You are 100% correct in saying it doesn't have to be a new year. It could be a new day. It could be a new week. It could be a new month, right? Just depending on you. But you have to train yourself to say it's a new day versus, oh, I'm going to do it New Year's. Because many people, they just have a concept of, oh, I don't mind waiting a little bit until New Year's, right? Procrastinate, right? It feels good, right? So they don't want to become disciplined. They don't want to do the work. They're putting it off to a later date. And the question I want to ask is, do you find that people who are struggling with mental health issues or, with their mental health, are they disciplined?
Well, there's one thing I want to say before that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, go
first
for it.
thing is, it's like when you really want to change, you want to change like now. Like when you're ready for change and you really want to change something, and let's say, like you're not going to wait 2 months prior to where it's January 1st to do that, because this is like your life. And that's 2 months of like being unhealthy because, right. So, but discipline, when you talk about that, I think that it's almost like a muscle that needs to be built. Sometimes we, start living a lifestyle of like, that's really undisciplined. And I think, just like a muscle, if you don't use it for 3 months, you have to work it back up. And I think that there is a lot of different components. In a way, we're kind of talking now about like mental strength and mental grit, which I very much believe in. Even as a therapist, it's like I see a lot of people that they don't want to get more mentally strong. They just want like, the answer to be, continuing to do what they want to do, but they want to like feel better, but they don't want to do anything about it. Right. So I think there is a huge aspect of being uncomfortable. Like if I could say the biggest thing that I see with people that are really, your ability to be uncomfortable in life really aligns with how big it can get, how big your life can get. That you kind of talked about it earlier of just, if you're just going to not be willing to like be that uncomfortable and you don't want to change your habits and you really don't want to do much about your circumstances because it's uncomfortable to do that. I think that being uncomfortable is something that I would really encourage everyone to look at. Like I know people that won't even travel to places that don't have air conditioning because that's too uncomfortable for them. And then, some people that like, so it's just our comfort level. And I think we live in a world today where it could be so comfortable. You don't have to go anywhere now. You can do anything. And I think that that's created a lot of problems because people don't have to build that mental grit, that mental strength muscle. Even being cold, it's like people don't want to be cold, but it's like, but when you're cold and like when you're uncomfortable, you have to like grow some grit. Like when you're in hard situations, when I think it's the hard things in life that make us grow. I think if we're not exposed to anything hard and we're never uncomfortable, I think I see that that's what's creating a lot of mental health issues. Like I say that grandly, that's a bigger conversation, but I see that a lot with not only the clients that come to see me, but just my experience of the world.
No, I love that last part. It was exactly what I was looking for because mental grit is so important when it comes to a person wanting to change because a, a person who gets to that point where they want to change, guess what? They might not know the first step. They might say, you know what?
Yeah.
Let me ask around. Let me ask some friends. Let me go to
Sure.
Google. And sure enough, you're getting all these different answers and they have literally hundreds, if not thousands of things that they could possibly do. And it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure.
What I would tell these individuals is don't do it by yourself. Ask someone for, a professional that can be there to guide you along the way. And this is one of the things that I hope you can do, Kim, for, people like to guide these people who are looking for change, who are calling you with a reason and they're trying to figure out solutions.
Also,
it's important. Yeah.
For sure. And I also want to say this, like when I hear you talking, like I agree with you, like there's some people that need that like professional help, but sometimes change, it's just like, just do one thing differently. Just do one small thing differently. And it's not even about it being right. I see a lot of people get hooked on, well, I need to do the right thing. I need to move to the right city and I need to date the right guy and and it's like, no, you don't. You just need to do something different. So get out of your own way. That's what I mean about like overly like thinking and then you're stalling, and then you're not making a change because you think there's a right. Like there is no right. There really isn't. It's just if it's different and if that doesn't work, then try something different. Like I almost want to a lot of what I want to do sometimes is dumb things down. Right? That sounds so unprofessional, but I think that this field I've watched it get really complicated, even with just like the theories and techniques and strategies. And there's like so much stuff going on in the field of mental health that sometimes I'm just trying to bring it back to really simple concepts because let's not overcomplicate something, right? It's almost just like, how do you change? It's just like, do what Nike says, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just do it. Just do something different. Make it this, it could be this small. No one will notice around you, but and then do something different the next day and just see where that takes you.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kim, you have been nothing but professional in here. The things you have been saying, I have loved every bit of it. And I know the work that you do with individuals is so profound. And, like it doesn't have to be big, like as you said, just do it, right? Begin somewhere. I know people, they get this idea of perfect, right? Like it's perfect time, the perfect moment. And yeah, we just have to sometimes say, okay, I'm just gonna take the step. And
Perfectly imperfect.
yeah, and that is life, right? We might not feel ready, but we still do it. I know when I was talking to people before I became a parent, I was like, I gotta wait till a certain age before I have kids and things like that. And they were like, no, you don't. And they're like, no, you don't. It basically said you fall into your role. So as soon as you're a parent, you just naturally just say, hey, I'm a dad, I'm a mom. And we figure it out, out along the way. And then people help mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, stuff like that. Those people are there to help you. And, one of the reasons I have coaching in session, the podcast, is because I bring on other professionals, not only to share their services, but to also educate people on different ways of thinking, different modalities, if you want to call it that, because there is no right or wrong way to live life. And, from our conversation today, there are so many different paths someone can take today. And, as we begin to wrap up, I would love for you to, please tell people where they can find you or reach you. So if they wanted to, get on a call with you to see if, it would be a good synergy for you to work with them, that would be great. And then also for you to give us some last words to leave with.
Great. Even if people just want to come say hi, that's cool for me too. So I have a website. It's just kimegel.com, my name. And then you can find me on socials on Instagram at I am Kim Egel. Last words, something that kind of came up when I was listening to you was the concept of control. And, when you had mentioned, it's like, there's this right time to be a parent. Like, I need to wait. There's going to be this right time in the future. I think that control and really looking at your individual relationship with control, because I noticed that people, when you're really highly controlled, you have a tendency to want to really plan a lot more and structure things. And there's this right time for things. And this is what we're going to do at 8 o'clock. And this is what we're going to do at 5 o'clock. But I think that, like everything in life, there's a balance where cool plans are like could provide positive structure, but too much structure then really stifles you and takes away the joy of just let me see what parenthood it's about. Like what does being ready mean? What does that even mean? Right? What does perfect even mean? Right? So I think when you start kind of loosening up a little bit and allowing, like, realizing that there's other things at play besides just you and your plan, sometimes that gives you the trust to kind of let go a little bit more. But like, that's another thing I really see is just high control. And I think these days there's more of it than ever, because I think when we get really uncomfortable, what do you want to naturally do? You kind of want to hold on more. Even like if you think about being uncomfortable, your physical body tightens up. I know mine does. Right. So it's an interesting thing to pay attention to for your own person, for your own self, of just like really noticing like your relationship with control and seeing how that comes into play with actually everything we've been talking about, just everything. So, because I think that's a huge like root point that a lot of things are stemming off of, how our relationship with control is really affecting a lot of the things and the choices and the perspectives that we have. So I guess that's what I would want to leave you with, is for people to think about that.
Yeah, no, it's profound control. And I'll definitely throw all those links, like your website, socials, in the description box below. And I was thinking about something. When we're born, we're born with only two fears: the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. And somewhere in life, we develop new fears. It could be fear of the dark, monsters, it could be whatever. And then I think about when I was a teenager, I think about being on the roller coasters, and early on, I would hold on to the bars. I was trying, like, this is so scary. But then I learned about it, right? Sometimes they say you gotta let go. The roller coaster is going to do what the roller coaster does. And so I started to let go. I said, I'm not going to hold on to the bars as tight anymore. I'm going to let my hands fly in the sky, and I'm going to let be. And I can say that was a moment in my life where I could say, this is life, because I wasn't trying to control things that I couldn't control. It was the momentum, if you want to, use the same words that we've been using, and it got me to the end. So if you're looking for some help, you're looking for some change, you're looking to get better discipline, control, all the things we talked about today, a nice, neat package, reach out to Kim, figure out how, you can make things work. And then, of course, it doesn't even have to be in the realm of professional help. It could be just saying, hey, heard you on the podcast, and just start the conversation, because I think too many people are afraid to just have a conversation, to begin some communication, because it's almost like success. Everyone is like self-sabotaging themselves. And the reality is, if you can just lean into someone else, you can ask for a little bit of help, and you can just say, hey, I'm ready. Ready for what? We don't know yet, but maybe down the road we will find out. So I want to thank you, Kim. You want to say something?
Yeah, there's one last thing I want to say, just because it's like a free resource for people. Like, I write a blog, and I write a lot about a lot of variety of mental health topics. So also too, on my website, you could find that blog. And I say that because it's free. I put a lot of energy into writing about those topics. So also just come along and check that out. And if it could be helpful, great.
Perfect. And I will check out that blog myself. I love reading. I have blogs on my website also.
Awesome. Love
and
it.
I do put a lot of work. So I know what it means to, to put these blogs out every single week. I will also put that link down there. So everyone check them out. Thank you, Kim, for coming on and just, having a fun, direct conversation with me today.
For sure. Thank you, Michael, for having me.